Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Okay, I want you to take a breath right now. I want you to just pause for 1 second before we dive in, because what I am about to talk about today requires a certain kind of emotional preparedness that I genuinely did not have when I first encountered this story, and I want to give you more warning than I gave myself. Because this is one of those moments, one of those ParkJimin moments specifically, that sounds relatively simple on the surface and then absolutely destroys you once you understand the full context of it. A man apologized. He bowed while he did it. That is the external fact. That is what happened. And by the time we are done today, you are going to understand exactly why that simple act of bowing and saying sorry is one of the most profound things I have seen from any artist in recent memory, and exactly why it tells you everything you need to know about who Jimin is, who he has always been, and who he has become even more fully since everything he has been through. So if you are ready, tissues nearby, heart prepared, let's go. Let me start by giving you the complete picture of what happened, because the apology itself does not exist in isolation. It exists inside a much larger story, and that larger story is the Weverse Live that Jimin and Jungkook did together after the Day 1 concert of the BTS World Tour Arirang in Busan on June 12, 2026. And I want to spend real time on this live before we get to the apology specifically, because the live itself is extraordinary in its own right and the apology lands completely differently once you understand everything that preceded it. The live happened after the concert. After 50,000 people. After a full performance. After everything that a BTS concert requires of 7 human bodies and 7 human souls. Jimin and Jungkook sat down together, the two members from Busan, in Busan, on the night of the Busan homecoming concert and just talked. Ate food together. Read comments from ARMY. Were completely, entirely, 100% themselves. And the footage that has been shared from this live, the translations that fans have been posting across social media, reveals a conversation that is so warm and so funny and so genuine and so full of the specific quality of intimacy that exists between these two people that I found myself smiling through most of it even before I got to the moment that broke me. Let me walk you through what they talked about, because every part of it matters. Jungkook started the live by cracking his neck and back, which, if you know Jungkook, is exactly the kind of thing he would do casually in front of millions of people without a second thought, and Jimin immediately reacted with that specific mix of alarm and exasperation that only someone who genuinely cares about another person can produce. He told Jungkook not to do that. He said it was dangerous. He asked if Jungkook knew how many times people end up in emergency rooms for doing exactly that. And Jungkook, being Jungkook, pointed out that he personally has never been taken to the emergency room for it, not even once. To which Jimin, and this is where I started fully falling apart, responded by suggesting that maybe it is because Jungkook's neck is a little thick. Which sent Jungkook into the kind of helpless laughter that only Jimin can produce in him. And then they talked about their spinal discs. Because of course they did. Jimin mentioned that his disc at the 5th vertebra tends to slip out, and Jungkook said he also has a disc issue, and they somehow turned a conversation about their shared back problems into one of the funniest and most endearing exchanges I have seen from them in years. Jimin said his disc comes out crooked and Jungkook confirmed his is also a crooked disc, with a completely straight face and a small gesture that I can only describe as a resigned shrug of acceptance, and then Jimin turned to the camera and told ARMY seriously, with genuine concern, that Jungkook really needs to be careful because living with a disc injury means you genuinely live close to the hospital. And Jungkook said, plainly and practically, we need to be careful. This is the thing about Jimin and Jungkook together that never gets old, that has never gotten old in 13 years, that I think will never get old no matter how much time passes. The way they take care of each other. The way Jimin worries about Jungkook's body, the way you worry about someone you have watched grow up and grow older and whose physical well-being matters to you in a personal, specific, daily way. The way Jungkook receives that worry without resistance, without embarrassment, just accepts it as a given fact of his life that Jimin will care about his neck and his disc and his sleep and his health and that this is simply a thing that is true. Then they talked about YouTube Shorts. Jimin mentioned that ranking videos, things like funniest moments from 5th to 1st place, or cutest dogs from 5th to 1st, have been trending lately. And Jungkook lit up and said he should make one too. And Jimin immediately said no. Do not do that. If you make a ranking video it will be completely uncontrollable. And the way Jungkook considered this, the brief pause where you could see him genuinely weighing whether the chaos that would result from a Jungkook ranking video would be worth it, was peak John Jungkook in every possible way. He knows exactly what he is. He has always known exactly what he is. He just weighs the chaos factor differently than the rest of us. They read comments together. Jimin read one in English, looked at it, said, it's English, and moved on, which sent ARMY into absolute chaos online because the casualness of it was so perfectly him. Jungkook then read a comment that said Yoongi, marry me, which he shared with Jimin, and they both dissolved into laughter about it. And then Jimin found a comment that said Jungkook, marry me, which led to a whole conversation about how ARMY is always on their phones, glued to their screens, 3.7 million people in this live alone just staring at their devices, and how this is a problem, and how Jimin even tells his own mother not to stare at her phone so much, which, again, sent the internet into justified chaos because of the absolutely perfect hypocrisy of ParkJimin, who is himself a frequent cause of phone staring, lecturing anyone about screen time. There was a deeply funny exchange about Jimin's hygiene habits after concerts, where Jungkook asked if Jimin was going to wash up immediately and Jimin admitted probably not right away, and Jungkook expressed gentle horror about this, and Jimin just laughed and said sometimes he needs to mentally prepare himself to shower, which is somehow the most relatable thing a person has ever said and also extremely funny coming from someone who just performed for 50,000 people. They talked about how Jungkook is 30 years old now and Jimin is 28, and how time passes so fast. They marveled together at how incredible the young generation of idols is, their energy, their dancing, their stage presence, and both of them agreed that they themselves could not have done what these younger performers do when they were that age, and then immediately and simultaneously said no, and then agreed that actually, yes, tomorrow's day 2 is going to be amazing and they are still strong and still have everything it takes. The simultaneous denial and affirmation of their own aging was so perfectly, quintessentially them that I genuinely laughed out loud watching it. They talked about the ARIH drinks, the beverage collaboration with BTS's name, and Jimin asked ARMY what their favorite flavor was, and mentioned his own favorites are mango, orange, and lemon, and said he basically likes all of them a little, and Jungkook mentioned he has an upcoming photoshoot which means he needs to lose a little weight for it, and Jimin said he has one too. Time flies. The conversation moved with the ease of two people who have known each other for so long that silence and topic changes feel completely natural and unremarkable. They talked about V's new hair color. Jimin noted it seriously and said everyone saw it, right? And Jungkook said he looked younger, and Jimin said wow, like what is this? And Jungkook said it reminds him of the Boy in Love era, that era, you know? And Jimin said yes, like some kind of youth potion, and they both said cool, and Jimin said V looks 10 years younger, and Jungkook said exactly right, extraordinary, and they said in almost perfect unison, Vhyun looks great, fantastic, love it. And it was the most casual, loving, completely effortless thing in the world. Just two members appreciating another member's transformation with the easy familiarity of people who have been looking at each other and talking about each other for over a decade. This is what the live was. This is the world we are in when we are inside a Jimin and Jungkook live. It is warm and funny and full of small specific details that feel like being handed something private and being trusted with it. It is the two of them being exactly themselves in exactly the way that only works when you are with someone you completely trust. And the reason I am taking this much time to describe it is because you need to feel the warmth and the ease and the safety of this live before we get to the moment when it shifted. Before we get to the apology. Because here is what happened. In the middle of all of this warmth and comfort and laughter and spinal disc conversations and screen time lectures, Jimin said something that changed the entire temperature of the live. He turned to the camera, and he apologized. He thanked ARMY for coming to the Day 1 concert. He said he felt the circumstances at the venue were not good. He said he is sorry on behalf of everyone. And Jungkook, beside him, said, "We are sorry." And then Jimin said something that I need you to hear fully, because this is where everything lands. He said, "Actually, I did not hear exactly what went wrong. I heard that they were still looking into it, and I think the company may have found the solution by now, but I have asked them to make sure this does not happen again tomorrow. So I hope everything will be better then." Does this make me sad about today? We prepared the gifts with good intentions, but distributing them ended up with quite a few obstacles, a lot. And Jungkook said, "A lot." And then Jimin continued, "We apologize on behalf of Big Hit." And he bowed. And Jungkook bowed beside him. And Jimin said, "I am sorry." And he bowed again. And then he said something else. He said, "More than saying it was the company's fault, I think the setback occurred during the organization process." And then he said this, and this is the part that got me: coming back to our hometown and giving a concert is really great. But honestly, until yesterday, I could not tell whether this was my hometown or Europe or the United States. Because as soon as we arrived, we went straight to rehearsal and then went directly back to the hotel. So it is not that I am not happy, it is just that I use so much energy that I have nothing left. And so I am just going to say hello and go to sleep. And when Jungkook said he had fun, Jimin looked at him and said, "But you look exhausted. You look thin. Please take care of your health. Please listen to your body and take care of yourself, okay?" And Jimin leaned toward the camera and said, "I am sorry," and bowed one more time. And then he laughed softly and said to Army, "I think I must be really tired. Now I want to talk about what all of this means. I want to talk about why a man bowing and saying sorry while eating late-night food with his best friend after a full concert is one of the most meaningful things I have encountered in my years of covering BTS content. Because I think it would be very easy to watch this moment and say, oh, he is apologizing because there were technical problems at the concert. That is a normal thing for an artist to do. And technically, yes. That is what happened on the surface level. There were reported issues at the Day 1 Busan concert, a delay of over an hour, problems with the gift distribution that Big Hit had prepared for ARMY, some kind of technical difficulty that is still being investigated. And Jimin, who had just performed with everything he had, who had used so much energy that he could not even fully feel that he was in his own hometown, who was so exhausted that he could barely find the words, sat down on a Weverse Live and apologized for it. But here is what makes it more than a standard celebrity apology. Here is what makes it Jimin specifically. The way he did it. The fact that he bowed. In Korean culture, bowing is not a casual gesture. It is a physical expression of sincerity, of respect, of genuine remorse. When you bow to apologize, you are not just saying words. You are putting your body into the apology. You are making it physical and therefore real in a way that words alone cannot fully accomplish. And Jimin bowed. Twice. While exhausted. After performing for 50,000 people. In his hometown. On the anniversary of the debut he had dedicated 13 years of his life to. He bowed and said sorry and meant it with his whole body. And then there is what he said about not being sure whether he was in his hometown or in Europe or the United States. This is the moment that hit me hardest, and I have been thinking about why. Because it is a window into the reality of what BTS's lives actually look like right now. They came to Busan, Jimin's Busan, Jungkook's Busan, the city that has been preparing for them for months, the city that turned itself into Jimin Land, and Jimin rode and ran a train wrapped in his face and lit up banners on every streetlight near the venue, and Jimin arrived and went straight to rehearsal and then straight to the hotel, and by the time the concert happened he was already running on reserves. He was already giving everything he had from a tank that had not been fully refilled. And he performed anyway. Completely. Without reservation. And then he sat down with his best friend and his phone and said to the people who came to see him, "I am sorry it was not perfect." And he bowed. This is who ParkJimin is. Not in an abstract, fanspeak way. In a concrete, specific, documentable way. He is someone who spent the day before the most emotionally significant concert of the Arirang World Tour, a concert in his literal hometown, on the approach to the anniversary of his debut, in rehearsals and hotel rooms, conserving energy, preparing, doing the work. Who then gave a full, extraordinary performance for 50,000 people who had traveled from all over the world to be there. Who then, instead of going directly to sleep, sat down and turned on a camera and spent time with ARMY because he knew they needed that contact after the complications of the evening. Who then apologized for things that were largely outside his direct control. Who bowed to say he was sorry even though he had nothing to apologize for personally. Who said, "I asked them to make sure this does not happen again tomorrow," because even in exhaustion, even in the middle of his own tiredness and his own emotional fullness from being home, he was already thinking ahead to the next night, to the next 50,000 people, to the experience he wants to give and the ways he wants to protect it. And then he leaned toward the camera and said I am sorry and laughed softly and said I must be really tired, and that was the end. I want to talk about what this moment reveals in the context of everything Jimin has been through in the past several years, because I think it cannot be separated from that context. This is a man who went through military service, who stripped away every layer of performance and identity and external validation and was simply himself, alone, in a structured and demanding environment, for a significant period of time. And what that experience does to a person, what it did to Jimin specifically, based on everything we can observe from how he has been carrying himself since his discharge, is clarify things. It removes the noise. It helps you understand what actually matters to you and what you are actually about underneath all of the machinery of being a global star. And what Jimin is about, underneath everything, is exactly what we see in this live. He is about taking care of people. About making sure the experience is good for the people who showed up. About sitting with his exhaustion and his pride and his joy at being home and still finding the energy to turn on a camera and say I am sorry this was hard, I see you, I am going to make tomorrow better. About doing it with his body, bowing, making it real with the whole of himself. About being the kind of person who, in 13 years of being one of the most watched human beings on the planet, has never once lost the ability to genuinely mean it when he says he is sorry. There is something else I want to address, which is the specific quality of his tiredness in this live. He said, I could not tell if this was my hometown or Europe or the United States. He said, I use so much energy that I have nothing left. And he said, I am just going to say hello and go to sleep. And the combination of those three things paints a very specific picture. A picture of someone who is giving everything, truly everything, to this tour. Who is not pacing himself, not saving something for later, not calculating the cost of each performance against future performances. He is giving all of it, every night, to every audience. And the Busan audience got all of it too, even though it cost him more than perhaps any of us watching from the outside can fully understand. He came home and he gave his home everything he had, and then he apologized for the parts that were not perfect. I also want to talk about Jungkook in this live, because he is a crucial part of the story and I do not want to pass over him. The way Jungkook sat beside Jimin during the apology, not trying to soften it, not trying to redirect, just sitting there and saying we are sorry alongside him, is such a quietly significant thing. He did not take over the apology or try to make it feel lighter. He just added his voice and his bow to Jimin's and let the moment be what it was. This is how these two support each other. Not with big gestures or dramatic interventions. With presence. With the simple act of being there, side by side, in the same boat, accountable together. And when Jimin told Jungkook he looks exhausted and thin and please take care of his health and listen to his body, in the middle of everything, in the middle of his own tiredness and his own apology and his own emotional weight, that care, that persistent, undistractable care that Jimin has for Jungkook, was also a window into something true. You cannot fake that. You cannot manufacture genuine concern for someone else's body and sleep and health in the middle of your own exhaustion. That is something that just lives in you. Something that has been built over 13 years of watching and caring and being responsible to someone in the particular way that you are responsible to the people who are your people. Now let me close by talking about why this moment matters, not just as a Jimin moment or a Jungkook moment or even a BTS moment, but as a human moment. Because I think one of the things that gets lost sometimes in the scale of what BTS is, the numbers, the records, the global footprint, the sheer magnitude of their presence in the world, is that at the center of all of it are 7 human beings who wake up tired and have disc problems and are not sure sometimes whether they are in their hometown or on the other side of the world and are doing their absolute best to give everything they have to the people who love them. And what we saw in this Weverse live, in this apology, in Jimin bowing toward a camera at the end of the most emotionally significant concert of the year and saying I am sorry and I must be really tired, is that human center. That real, warm, exhausted, caring, completely genuine human being who has been doing this for 13 years and has never stopped meaning it. This is what distinguishes BTS from other artists. Not the talent, though the talent is extraordinary. Not the production, though the production is world-class. Not even the music, though the music is genuinely great. It is this. It is Jimin in a hotel room or a restaurant or wherever he was, post-concert, post-everything, sitting in front of a phone and caring enough to apologize. Bowing. Meaning it. And then laughing softly and saying I think I must be really tired, and being exactly and completely and irrevocably himself. I cannot wait for day 2. I genuinely cannot wait for what Jimin and what all of them are going to bring on the anniversary date tomorrow. After everything that day 1 was. After this live. After this apology that was really a declaration of love in disguise. Thank you so much for watching. Please leave a comment below telling me your reaction to this live, to this moment, to all of it. Please subscribe if you have not already. And until day 2 coverage tomorrow, take care of yourselves, stay well, and purple you. Purple heart.